seeing as I, like your wife, am always getting in that work, I feel like I can treat myself. So I went ahead and treated myself. And I'm glad I did, because I'd be here eating my feelings right now based off of these rankings so far, man. All right.
Oh, boy.
All right, so I'm going to jump straight into it. First, I'm going to say congratulations to you that the College Football Playoff Selection Committee decided to follow its own protocol and rank your Oregon Ducks inside the top 4, which is to say that it feels like all they got to do is win out and they're going to be in it. How do you feel about that?
Oh, boy. Well, look, I was not sure they would do the right thing. And as we saw the rankings start to come out, it was very clear that they were ranking teams that had beaten other teams ahead of them, right? So, like, it was like, okay, well, maybe this is going to happen. But, is it going to be Oregon 5? Where's Cincinnati going to be? And then, obviously, now, look, Oklahoma, we'll get to them in a second. If they win out, they have 3 pretty tough games coming out. Like, if they win out, they might be in there, right? If Ohio State wins out, we'll find out. But look, Oregon now can say, hey, look, we control our destiny. That phrase gets overused in sports, but literally, if they win out, right, we have Washington this weekend. We should be Washington. Washington State at home, Pac-12 after dark. Washington's off a bye. That game terrifies me. Probably have to play Utah twice and play Oregon State. If we went out, we're in, I think. 12-1, Pac-12 championship, one really bad loss. But I think as the committee has these rankings come out, it's very clear they look into some of the reasons why teams win and lose. Yeah, we shouldn't have lost to Stanford. Well, I wish our OC was in the hospital with emergency surgery. Like, that just was a big factor in that game. And so, yeah, I feel comfortable if we went out, we're in. But there's still tough games left. It's the Pac-12 conference, man. Nothing goes as planned in the Pac-12 conference.
I think the Stanford loss doesn't look that bad anymore after Washington went ahead and beat them. I mean, that's me, though. Like, I think other people might ding you because obviously Washington lost to Montana to start the season. But I also watched that Stanford-Oregon game, and I watched as much college football as anybody in the world. And I just thought if Kayvon Thibodeau doesn't pick up a roughing the Patrick call, game's over. Yeah. Nobody cares.
Well, I mean, look, that and then the pass interference on the final play of regulation, you're like, that's not pass interference, buddy. You let that go the entire game, and now we're going to call the one time all game we call pass interference the final play of the game. And, like, it's just other things. Again, our OC, for those who don't know, Jordan Moynihan's really good, right? He's really good. And the morning of the game, he had to go to the hospital for emergency surgery. It was really bad. I'm not going to reveal what, but it was really bad, guys. And so imagine you're sitting in the breakfast room and your coach gets, like, taken away to the hospital. And Oregon played their worst offensive game. Like, I think some of that context does matter there.
I also am inclined to grade teams and really rank teams based off of their best, not their worst, which is why I believe that being undefeated ought to matter more than anything else. Barring that, head-to-head, beating people in true road games matters to me, and I think Oregon, outside of Texas A&M, has the best win in college football so far this season. You can make an argument about Michigan, but I still think beating Ohio State at the shoe without Kayvon Thibodeau is as great a win as you're going to find in college football at all this year. But, hey, look, I'm excited for Oregon. I think that you got a really great road here to the playoff. It's about whether or not you want that 4th spot against number 1 Georgia.
I'll take it.
I was gonna say, like, are they a threat to beat Georgia? And if not, who is the biggest threat to beat Georgia?
Okay. Well, the biggest threat is Alabama. But here's the thing. So people have said that, well, should Oregon want to play this game? We've talked, me and you, I think have talked about this, I think at the dinner in Los Angeles about 2019. So Oregon, for example, that year, it was kind of, are we going to make the playoff? And we lost Arizona State. I argued at that point of our program, it was better for us to play in a Rose Bowl against Wisconsin than it was to go play the Joe Burrow LSU team. We just kind of weren't ready yet for that matchup. Now, I think we need to test ourselves physically against Georgia or Alabama. Like, now's that time to see. We've had 4 recruiting classes in now. We're very physical up front. Like, we have Kayvon, obviously. We have our offensive line. We have other good defensive linemen. Like, now's our opportunity to test ourselves against Georgia. Are we going to win that game? I don't know. It'd be pretty tough, right? Georgia's really, really, really good on defense. I mean, Jordan Davis is my size, but moves much better than me, right? Like, he's a big old man in there. But again, like, it's time to test ourselves against Georgia and Alabama. Now, we open up against Georgia next year. So getting the opportunity now to play them this year could obviously be very helpful for next season. So, look, we'd be 15-point underdogs. I think I saw it today, 15-point dogs. Okay, well, we were 14-point dogs against Ohio State, too, in Columbus, and we won that game. So, but I want to see it. I want to see us play that game now.
I have a question on top of that I think is interesting to me to note because the Georgia game could be played twice. You mentioned that you could play Georgia in the playoff this year, and then you open against them next year. What would it mean to beat Georgia this year going into next year and knowing that, hey, look, if we beat Georgia again, we're probably tailor-made for the playoff?
Well, you look, again, I think you want to test yourself against the best teams in the country. And, this was not the year Oregon was supposed to make a playoff. It was next year everyone had targeted because our quarterback situation was going to be better. And we just continued to pile in the talent. Yeah, KT would be gone. But as a team, our team talent is continuing to get better. We have younger players that are better than guys playing now, but they're not playing because they're young. And some guys that got hurt in camp and whatnot, nonetheless, that was supposed to be our year next year. So getting an opportunity to play this year, obviously beating Georgia would be incredible, and it would lead us to thinking next year we have a chance. And I've argued this too, RJ. With the playoff, I'm with you. It needs to be expanded like now. And we'll get to that in a second. But for a Pac-12 school to win a championship, the 4-team playoff is much easier and more preferable. We have to win 2 games now. In the new format, you got to win 3 or 4. And Oregon has the depth, I think, to play 3 or 4 tough games in a row. But a lot of these schools don't, right? And it's actually going to make it tougher, I think, for an Oregon to win a championship, having to win 4 playoff games in a row against the top 16 teams in the country or top 12 teams in the country than it is now. Now, if you upset Georgia, you feel good, I would imagine, playing someone else. What if Michigan State upsets Alabama? And then you have Michigan State, Oregon. And I would feel great in that contest, having the opportunity to do that. So you have to win 2 games in this format. So if we get in this year, obviously, beating Georgia is going to be very tough. I'm not saying we're going to do it, but this is sort of like the year to get it done.
Well, I mean, that's basically what it is for all the Power 5 teams. And I think the best argument for college football playoff expansion is people are getting tired of seeing the same teams make the playoff. I'm the only person that wants a 16-team playoff, though I can point to the NFL, which everybody doesn't have a problem with, having 14 teams, and the NFC East champion usually trash, but nobody says anything because you can see Philadelphia running with Nick Foles in an MVP year for Carson Wentz and win a Super Bowl. Or
they were the 1 seed that year.
Well,
to be fair, but yes.
With Nick Foles at quarterback.
I know, but last year was the year to complain about that because Washington hosted Tampa Bay in the wild card round.
You would also you're also making my point in that the FCS, quiet as it's kept, plays a 24-team playoff where one team out of the Pioneer League wins, and everybody knows that Pioneer League automatic qualifier is going to get their head handed to them in the second week of the playoff, and nobody cares. But to this point about expansion, I think we're going to get to 12 teams, if for no other reason than we're having to celebrate Cincinnati at number 6 because Cincinnati's now the highest-ranked Group of 5 team in the history of the college football playoff, which for me is like telling my goddaughters who are 8 and 6, hey, you should be grateful that I took you trick-or-treating and you got candy at all, right? Because we don't think that you're good enough. Doesn't matter that you beat a team that we rank number 10 on the road at their house. It only matters that you play in a G5 league. And I think that would be my biggest argument for the playoff. But also, we got this other thing that I'm neglecting to talk about.
We'll talk about that in a second. I promise I'll lay out here and let you have your due because that was atrocious. But look, thinking about Cincinnati, look, I'm at the point now where I want them to get in. I've been kind of a proponent against like UCF getting the playoff because I feel like just that season they weren't one of the better teams. But this year, the way this year is going, where there really is not a team that's a great all-around. Like Georgia's great on defense, but offensively, if they had to play in a shootout, not what they're built to do. Right? Alabama has their warts here and there. Oklahoma has their issues. Oregon, Ohio State. There's not like really a lot of complete teams this year, and so I kind of want to see them get in. But I get what the committee's saying. Look, their conference schedule is now they're in. Great win, obviously top 10 win, but now they play Temple, UCF, Navy, Tulane, Tulsa, South Florida, SMU, who's ranked not in the playoff ranking, I don't think, right? Yeah. East Carolina. Like, that is a problem. Now, it's not their fault, right? They can only play who's on their schedule. Indiana not being good this year is not helpful for them. They went and beat Indiana. Notre Dame is good. They're top 10. That's a great win. But Oregon has a better win. So I guess kind of why they're ahead of them. But nonetheless, if they go undefeated, man, I don't know how you leave them out. They're not going to make the playoff.
Jeff, they went undefeated last year. And the reason that they even get respected this year is because they played Georgia close in a Peach Bowl that was basically a home game for the Georgia Bulldogs, who everybody believes is going to win the national championship this year.
Yeah.
I can't look at players. I can't look at players who I asked to do one thing. I asked them to win football games. I asked them to put it all on the line to win football games. And we tell them from the time that you're in Little League, I don't care if you win by 70 or you win by 1. Winning's winning unless you play FBS college football. And that bothers me. That I can't, like, one of the things I need to bring up in this context of Cincinnati, right? Because I'm not comparing Cincinnati to Oregon. I'm comparing Cincinnati to undefeated teams, right?
Yeah.
UTSA is undefeated and they don't even rate. I would flip tables if I was Jeff Traylor, because it would do wonders, one, for my program to be ranked in the top 25 of the college football playoff rankings. It matters. But also, what are you telling the kids? You're telling them empirical data and scoreboards do not matter. They'll say, hey, you didn't play anybody. They can't control that. And here's another thing that really bugs me. We proved last year you can make up football games on the fly. So if anybody wants to go and challenge UTSA, I'll bet they would open the door. Otherwise, what are we doing here? It bothers me on behalf of the kids more than anybody else, because I can't look at them and say, you're wrong.
I think, and this is the year when, this was a way to do this, right? Because you again, like the bottom half of this playoff rankings, okay, Iowa, Wisconsin, Minnesota, like they heavily weighed the Big Ten here, right? I mean, Mississippi State has 3 losses, an LSU loss, right, and a Memphis loss. That Memphis loss was a wonky game, but they're 17 right now, right? And it felt like this is a year when, look, you can reward UTSA for the season they have, put them in the opening rankings, and then maybe by the end of the season, if they're undefeated, but a couple other teams are just better than them, okay, then move them whatever. But here's also a part that we don't talk about, I think, enough about these rankings. So obviously humans are doing it, right? That's the eye test is part of it, but they use a lot of advanced numbers, right? Kind of the analytics, quote analytics, and a lot of them don't rate these Group of 5 programs very high. Like the ones I have right now have UTSA as the 67th best program in the country, and I don't think Iowa's terribly good. But they're not 67. And if you're trying to decide where to put these teams, and the eye test is great and all, but then you look and you're like, oh no, they're 67th. Like, how do you justify that when you're thinking about the whole process of these rankings? Because again, this is the tough part everyone has, right? Is it most deserving or is it best team? I would argue UTSA is deserving to be ranked. You're right. They have won all the games in front of them, and it's a tough sell to tell your program, hey, yeah, sorry guys, the winning that you do is not good enough. But they would be considerable underdog against all these top 25 teams right now. So that's the question, right? Most deserving or best team, and sometimes you have to walk that line of where you rank those teams based on that.
Jeff, your Oregon Ducks are a worse football team than Ohio State's Buckeyes.
Correct.
And they were exactly. What I'm saying is, line the kids up.
Yeah.
And I abhor these advanced statistics because they are tilted toward recruiting rankings, right? They're tilted toward your win-loss records against other teams, which you cannot. I mean, I can't help that Kansas is a bad football team. I can only say that Oklahoma beat Kansas, for instance.